welcome to the Total Soccer Show Champions League knockout round playoff first leg roundup. Yes, the name of the round is not too pretty, but we got lots of entertainment from Madrid and Man City. Milan's result was a bit of a clanger, but Weston McKennie scored an absolute banger. Sporting Lisbon's chances went up in flames, and Bayern did what Bayern do. They win knockout games. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's your friend, it's my friend, it's the Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing very well indeed,
Hooray.
Taylor. It is a Thursday as we record. I'm feeling the sort of the afterglow, the warm afterglow of the Champions League knockout round playoff first leg.
Yes, the thing we all plan to be bouncing our grandchildren on our knee and telling them all about whatever you just said it was, because I still don't fully know the name.
They got to work on the branding. That's all I've got to say. Champions League phase, that was bad.
The phasing. We already solved this.
We did. We need to put it to UEFA.
Joe
Lowry's here. Joe Lowry, hello.
Hey, I've just been really busy the last couple of days working on launching my own D1 league in the United States. So I think I'm going to make something really cool. I think it's going to be new. I think it's going to be different, and I'm going to have no competition. So I've been focusing on the marketing of that rather than the UCL rebrand, but I can pitch in there too.
What are you calling it, Joe? USL D1 League Division Top Premier something?
Are you reading my notes, Ryan? I'm super uncomfortable by that. That's exactly what I have written down. Unbelievable.
I got the press briefing that said it was the Lowry Super League. Have you changed the title
That was
again?
an outdated copy. That's my bad. That's on the marketing person that I hired to do this. It's totally not me. They'll be dismissed immediately.
The Premier Lowry. Nope, that's bad. Graham Muffins here. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. How are you? Did you enjoy? Let's talk about Champions League again, shall we? Get us back on track. How much did you enjoy the Oasis-inspired Rodri banner before the City Real Madrid game? Is that your kind of tifo?
That is my speed, yes. So the tifo that the Man City fans had out before Man City's inevitable defeat at the hands of Real Madrid had Rodri's picture kissing his Ballon d'Or and the phrase "Stop crying your heart out," which, as Joe knows, of course, is one of Oasis's biggest songs.
Yep.
But I don't know, their hearts were crying a little bit at the end, Graham, huh?
Yeah, and I've already asked the City fans if the Scotland supporters can recycle that banner for our next game against Spain. Of course, Stop crying your heart out, Rodri. Yeah.
So right, I think that song came out in about 2005, and every international tournament since then, the BBC's closing footage of England's inevitable failure has gone out to that song. So it's a painful
They're like,
one for England.
we've already bought the license for this. We'll just squeeze everything out of it that we can.
Reuse, indeed. All right, plenty of Champions League to get to. Before we get there, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you'll find our bonus content, bonus episodes, bonus videos, and of course, access to our Discord server where all, if not most, but all of the cool kids are hanging out. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. That made no sense. You can also watch these episodes on the YouTubes. Go check us out there. Link in show notes. All right. Champions League time. Man City 2, Real Madrid 3. Arguably, Taylor, I would say, both these teams at times playing some of their best soccer of the season and some of the time playing some of their worst soccer of the season. It was...
That's actually perfect, Ryan.
Which is kind of what we thought might happen, right, when we were discussing this game on the weekend review, that basically with both teams having makeshift back lines, Real Madrid especially so, but still having a front four that can terrify pretty much everybody, with City having plenty of attackers, not least Erling Haaland, it felt like this game could be back and forth with a bunch of goals and could have some inconsistent moments along the way, and that's pretty much exactly what we got, unless you ask Carlo Ancelotti, who I think is really using this game as a potential statement win, as a potential, here we go, this is how the rest of the season is going to play out, because he sang the praises of every single Real Madrid player involved. He talked about sacrifice and playing together and how this unit can work together. It felt like they did kind of what like the basic expectation would be, but when you have as many attackers as they do, getting them to do some defending is a victory unto itself, and then a victory itself is a victory itself. So, good result for Real Madrid, less so for Manchester City in the end.
Did Ancelotti sing the praises of Real Madrid's man of the match, Ederson? I thought
he didn't make the notes, but it was the fine print at the bottom, and also Ederson. Thank you so much.
Okay. Graham, that was one of the moments of the game, obviously. Ederson coming... What did he do wrong here? Just wildly coming way off his line?
everything. I mean, I actually think so. For the equalising goal, I think he makes a good decision where he stops himself from throwing the ball out quickly to Rico Lewis, and he sort of says to everyone, right, calm down, let's just manage the game, which is something that Man City haven't done a whole lot of in recent times this season. And then his execution on what happens is Man City overloads on the right side, high up the pitch, anticipating obviously that the ball's going to reach there, and it does not. And Ederson just gets his technical execution on the kick out all wrong. And all of a sudden, Real Madrid have players high, and it's 3-on-3, and the ball's in the back of the net. I even think the save from, I can't remember who has it. Is it Bellingham that has the shot that then for the equaliser is then finished by Brahim Diaz. I even think his save for that is weird. Like, maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh because it's a powerful shot at the near post, and I can imagine that's a difficult save to pull off. It just hits him in the chest. Like, he doesn't pull it, he doesn't push it round the post or anything, and then it's 2-2. And then for the equaliser, he's having a quicksand game at that point, and he just comes miles off his line when he had no chance of getting the ball, and it's an easy lob over him from Vinicius, and Bellingham just follows it in and finishes. So it was a weird one for City, where obviously the easy narrative is this is another collapse from them, and they've conceded a whole bunch of goals in the last few minutes of Champions League games this season. But I actually felt like, they were winning with 4 minutes to go. They were 2-1 up. I felt like they had controlled periods of the match, but the individual mistakes towards the end of the game really cost them.
Yeah. Joe, to pull back and sort of look at this game as a whole, obviously a lot of key events here. Jude Bellingham with the late winner, Jude Bellingham doing Jude Bellingham things there. Erling Haaland with the brace, goals from Kylian Mbappe. And of course, City alum Brahim Diaz. We all fondly remember his 5 games for Manchester City. He does, certainly, for not celebrating his goal after that one. But this was, for its faults, a very fun and entertaining 90 minutes, was it not?
Yeah, this game ruled, and I think it ruled for all the reasons that you let us in with, which was just a beautiful summary still of this game. The top line of my notes is super fun game between two flawed but absurdly talented teams, which is my slightly wordier version of basically what you said, Ryan. There were some delightful sequences in this game. Real Madrid almost immediately in this match testing Man City in that high line. Vinny Jr. gets in behind in the 10th minute and it ends up being ruled offside. 11th minute, Mbappe gets in behind. And then a little bit later on in the first half, City start to see some control, and they're still in that 2-3-5 kind of controlled possession shape with the fullbacks, who are also center backs in this game, pinching inside next to the pivot, who was also a center back in this game, and John Stones. They were trying to control the game in that 2-3-5, and I actually thought did a fairly good job for stretches of the first half. And then you get the lovely build-up sequence from Man City in the 19th minute, which looked like the Man City team that we're kind of used to seeing, where they build from the back. It's down this left side. Gvardiol ends up making this fantastic third-man run off the ball into the box. He receives it and chests it to Erling Haaland in one touch, who scores. It was a beautiful sequence of play, and they carved Real Madrid wide open, which is something that Real Madrid leave themselves vulnerable to quite often. I was a bit surprised at how aggressively they pressed, given how poor they are as a team in almost every game at actually doing that. But it shows that they were willing to try to extend to force those turnovers to get their attackers in behind. And eventually the script flipped a little bit, where Real Madrid ended up having more of the chances. They were the better team in the second half, even before Man City collapsed. And you had some really nice combination play, some really good aggressive play, and then some lovely work off of a free kick in the 60th minute with that clipped ball into the box from Ceballos that Mbappe kind of mishits. He definitely mishits it. But it ends up working out perfectly for him, and it's 1-1, and Real Madrid are right back in this game. There were highs, there were lows. This was like one of my favorite Champions League games that I've watched so far this year.
Wow, okay. Taylor, for all the fun it was, did we learn much about either side? I saw a headline on The Guardian saying words to the effect of Real Madrid are Real Madrid again. I don't know if we buy into that, and it seems like we saw some of the similar sort of flaws that we've seen in Man City this season, but on a slightly bigger scale.
Yeah, and I think that can be a lesson learned on the Man City front, at least for me. To the Real Madrid point, I think we did, and I think that's where some of Ancelotti's post-match talking points have been, I think, maybe a little bit clear, at least in my mind, that you are trying to praise players for doing things that they haven't always done this season or haven't done as well this season, even if it is sort of a bare minimum level. The idea that Mbappe is pressing, and there were moments in this game when he wasn't, and you could see Carlo Ancelotti having words with him from the touchline. I'm not sure how often we've seen that this season. There was Rodrigo playing on the right, but doing a lot of defensive work. Jude Bellingham in the middle, doing a lot of defensive work. And I think there was more pulling in the same direction for Real Madrid in this game, and I think you could see them, I think as Joe and Graham have already kind of like talked out, you could see them being a little bit more switched on. You could see them pressing more. You could see them stepping when maybe they would have been kind of standing off or having 3 players standing in the left channel. Instead, in this game, there was pressing, there was winning the ball, and there was sort of, I think, trying to take control of the game. And in that way, it was the age-old Real Madrid of just sort of backing themselves to find a way through, to find a way to get the result, and to throw on more players to make that happen. But I think within that, there was a sort of unity in the approach. For Man City, I think a few weeks ago, I thought, okay, we've seen their next evolution. Even if it's not a full evolution, they're going to have the 3 central midfielders stay deep. They're going to go more direct into Haaland and Marmoush, and they're going to just kind of utilize their technical ability to play the ball out of the back. But then when pressed, they'll go long to the man who can handle basically 2 defenders at once. And I thought we might see City find some consistency in their performances, and instead, we see the same mistakes. We see the same kind of drop-off at the end of the game. I think Joe referred to it as a collapse. Graham, I think you said it wasn't a collapse, but it was more individual mistakes costing them. To me, that is a collapse for Man City, because so often with Pep's teams, they're playing a unified style, a very cohesive style, where it's about the system and the approach and less so the individual. But I think when individual mistakes are popping up, to me, that's a sign that things aren't kind of all to continue with it, pulling in the same direction. And so in that way, I find Man City continue to be a conundrum, and Real Madrid are a conundrum, but in a good way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think factually, obviously, it was a collapse, right? Where City are winning with 4 minutes to go and then they lose. That is a collapse. And you look at the numbers this season. I was scrambling for them in my notes earlier, but this was the 9th time this season that City have conceded twice in 10 minutes. They have also conceded 8 goals in the last 16 minutes of their last 5 Champions League games, and this happened in the PSG game and it happened in the Feyenoord game. That was the match that this was most reminiscent of, was that Feyenoord game where Man City were 3-1 up with like 5 minutes to go and somehow drew it 3-3. But where I think it was a little bit different was, and I think about those games against PSG and then Arsenal in the Champions League where Arsenal won that game 5-1, just physically Man City couldn't hang in those games. You could see that they were dropping off physically, and I didn't really see that to the same extent in this game. So that's where I think there was a difference. Just switching it very quickly to Real Madrid, the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is they had one first-team defender in their back four for this game, and that's Ferland Mendy, who I think there's question marks over at this point. Maybe Fran Garcia is their first choice left back. Camavinga's played a bunch of games there this season. They play Fede Valverde at right back, who is their third choice right back, who's a midfielder. Lucas Vazquez gets injured at the weekend. Dani Carvajal is out for the season. They're playing Tchouameni, who's a midfielder in central defence. Eder Militao's out injured. Antonio Rudiger's out injured. And then they've got Raul Asensio, who was a Castilla player earlier in the season, gets promoted. I don't want to do him a disservice. He's doing a decent enough job in this team, but I don't think he's a player that Real Madrid thought was going to be like a key pillar of their team anytime soon. I don't think he's that highly rated. So to go away to Man City, who have obviously had their own troubles this season, and get a result like this, I can see why Carlo Ancelotti was so bullish after the game. And it was an uneven performance by both teams, certainly by Real Madrid. But I can see why he's trying to accentuate the positives from this performance. Because we've seen it in past seasons with Real Madrid, it could be a catalyst for them to really kick on.
Yeah, it is wild, the discrepancy between center back availability. Maybe I'm the only one who cares about this.
Like, City truly, are hoarding them all. That's the problem.
5 center backs starting in this game for Man City. Like, Pep has just said, what if the whole plane was built out of center backs? And this has been a trend now for a while. But like, that's absolutely what's happened. And Real Madrid just don't have any. It is wild to me. And it's also wild. I want to dig into the defensive stuff a little bit from this game on both sides. But to start with Man City, it's wild that Pep started 5 center backs. And Graham, you've talked about how Real Madrid found chances in this game, even before the collapse from Man City. We've talked about that so far in this first segment. City were super open in this game. They were not airtight. They were not in control for long stretches of the last 2/3 of this match. There were 5 central defenders on the field. That is the reason why Pep has done that, is because he, like every other manager basically at the top levels, is obsessed with control. Controlling the space, controlling the tempo, and you can control the space and the tempo of the game better when you have bodies who can win the ball and also still check a lot of the basic boxes of Pep's possession-based system, who can break lines and carry it forward on the dribble. That's why those center backs are in this team, is because it's supposed to give Man City control. almost never, outside of a chunk in the first half, and I think I referenced it earlier, I almost never felt like Man City were in control of this game. Not that Real Madrid were either, and I'll get to them in a second, but it didn't seem like Man City had settled. It didn't seem like they were cohesive and were able to really counter-press very effectively. Their pressing was okay in this game out of that 4-4-2 shape. I don't think it was great, and they were still quite porous for long stretches of this match. On the Real Madrid side, because none of those concerns are super new with City, but I think it's fascinating that there are 5 center backs on the field, and it still doesn't seem to matter. For Real Madrid, they are Real Madrid, and I think, Ryan, I sort of agree with maybe where you led. I think it was Taylor and with this a bit ago. I don't really think we learned a whole lot from this game. From Real Madrid's perspective, they are still Real Madrid, in that they have absurd attacking firepower. They are able to break you down. They were able to score goals on the break. They will find goals. They will find chances. They are absurdly stacked, regardless of who's in this back line. But defensively, they're horrible. Like, they are, and this is not new. They are so porous defensively. Their pressing was a problem. I know we've maybe kind of given Mbappe some credit for pressing, and that's fine. I think he shouldn't, frankly, have to do a ton of pressing. You should build your team to accommodate some of that because he's that level of a player. But man, when Real Madrid would try to press in their 4-4-2, it was Mbappe and Vinny Jr. up top. It was Rodrigo on the right. It was Jude Bellingham on the left. And then the 2 center mids. When they would try to press, City consistently found line-breaking passes right through the front 2 into John Stones as the pivot, right behind them with nobody tracking John Stones. It was bad, like really, really bad in this game, to the point where if Real Madrid had lost this match, they really had no one to blame but themselves. Thankfully, they can give some credit to Ederson and Mateo Kovacic, who I don't know how he's gotten off scot-free on the Man City collapse discussion, because that's where my eyes went first on the first goal when he doesn't track Diaz, and he definitely makes Ederson's life harder on the second goal. But Real Madrid, as we look forward to them probably being in this competition for a bit longer at this point after this result than Man City, but who knows, we'll find out more next week. As we look at them, the thing that I'm watching first and foremost in every Real Madrid game against a good team that is capable of punishing them is how porous are they going to be in this game defensively, because it feels like they are always on the edge of disaster. But again, to go all the way back around, that is the Real Madrid thing, so maybe I'm a fool for even thinking that it's going to be a problem.
It's weird to be like, we learned that we already knew some things about these teams, and this game reinforced those things. So in a way we learned, but in a way we didn't. Joe, I do love the way you outlined Real Madrid and the press and that lineup. That is almost 100% how Florentino Perez talks about this team. It's Mbappe, Vinicius, Bellingham, Rodrigo, and then, I don't know, 2 central midfielders.
The rest.
Whoever, the rest. And then a 12-year-old in defense, I think. But he's keeping Sergio Ramos out of the team.
None of them have skyscrapers, whatever.
and Joe, I think you talked about how you didn't feel like City had control. This is one of those interesting games in which I think City dominate possession, dominate passes completed, but at the same time have significantly fewer key chances. Yeah. And I think you can dominate possession, control the ball, and at the same time not feel like you are taking the game and fully controlling everything. And that's where I think those individual mistakes then make the already rough floor plan even rougher.
And to that point, Taylor, I kind of struggled with understanding their midfield in this game, where it's John Stones, Joe's already outlined, it's John Stones in central midfield in that anchor role. Obviously, we saw him do that a couple of seasons ago. But then it's Gvardiol in the middle in possession as well, and Akanji pushing into central midfield when City were on the ball, so they would have the 2 of Diaz and who's the other one, Ake, and then it would be a 3 ahead of them. And I can understand why Pep wanted to have those players in the middle, because obviously they want to defend against the Real Madrid quick transition. In the first half, that didn't really happen. It felt like Real Madrid, there was a couple chances where there's the Mbappe chance in the first few minutes where Vinicius just sort of dribbles right through the middle. There's the penalty where Real Madrid are able to get in behind. So there were still those moments in quick transition for Real Madrid. And in possession, I don't know if it was worth that sacrifice, because Stones, as good as John Stones is on the ball, he's not a progressive passer in central midfield. Gvardiol is a bit of a freak, and it's his really punchy pass into Haaland and then his third man run, as Joe said, that creates that goal. So maybe it's worth it just for that moment, but it wasn't a hugely repeatable thing for Man City. So it just felt very very simplistic for Pep Guardiola, where it was like, we want to stop Real Madrid in quick transition, so we'll just put all the centre-backs in central midfield. I don't know, it was a weird setup.
So to continue Joe's analogy metaphor, it's what happens when you build the whole plane out of centre-backs, but then also only gas it up about a quarter of the way. Things don't work out so well, is I guess what we're getting at. Yeah.
All right, Joe, so on that note, how do you think things will play out next Wednesday when this one resumes at the Bernabeu? pretty open tie, it's probably fair to say at this point. But what do you think Pep does to try and get back in this game? Is it 6 centre-backs, or is it maybe trying to take advantage of Real Madrid being a bit vulnerable to the counter and the high press?
John Stones in goal.
Yeah, that's the next logical progression that we were all thinking. It's John Stones in goal. I don't know how much flexibility Pep really has to make massive changes. This City team sort of seems like, not this specific 11, but the City that we saw in this game feels like a pretty good microcosm for the City that we've gotten this year. I don't expect huge tactical changes from either side in this next game, nor do I necessarily expect Man City to advance out of this playoff first leg, second leg, third leg, fourth leg, fifth leg, whatever we decided we were going to call this. I don't necessarily anticipate that. Not that they couldn't, because the talent is still incredible on this team.
It's called USL League One, Joe. That's what we're calling
Gotcha.
it now to make it even more
Thanks,
confusing.
Taylor.
Yep.
That's helpful. I don't think we're going to see a script that looks dramatically different. I think if City are going to find a way to progress, which is still totally possible, don't get me wrong, it will be by punishing some of the mistakes that Real Madrid do make in almost every game defensively. Real Madrid, though, have the edge in terms of attacking quality right now. They somehow seem to have a bit more cohesion to them despite the ragtag defensive group that they've got. Really, though, all I want to do is just enjoy Fede Valverde playing his 11th different position or whatever it is for him. He's the Weston McKennie of Uruguayan football, and I love him very much.
Yeah, he's so good. Is it possible we see Omar Marmoush for the second leg? I'm thinking about that Chelsea game where Man City went really, I think that was his debut.
Yep.
They went really direct, and basically they wanted to get one-on-one against they wanted to physically match up against the Chelsea centre-backs as often as possible, and if Real Madrid don't have any centre-backs, and they tried to do a bit of that in this game, City, but do they really lean into that ploy and get Marmoush on the pitch and just get Haaland and Marmoush running at Real Madrid? Almost kind of what Real Madrid did to them at the Etihad. Like, that would require City to be a little bit more pragmatic and maybe have less of the ball, but that might be the thing that makes Real Madrid uncomfortable, as if they're then having to break down a low block and Man City are going into open space the other way.
Well, that could happen, Graham, but Marmoush did come on in this one, and City immediately gave up the lead and conceded 2 goals, so maybe...
And they were both totally his fault.
all his fault, right?
Yeah.
Marmoush also in goal? Solid.
Okay. That means Ederson's in midfield. Ederson is on board. He's been waiting for that chance for years.
Oh, yeah.
He's on penalties as well.
Ederson and Haaland up top, I'd be fine with as well. Graham, I'm going to end this with a question for you and not Joe, because Joe is rational and hates narrative. I think like this is a somewhat lazy, but it's the best way I can outline it, way to approach the second leg. Is I could see it going either way. I do think if Man City win, it's that they have to kind of figure out a way to not let what happened happen in this game, but also find a way to just be more in control, especially away from home, to be better in their performance and more consistent for the full 90 minutes in their performance. And in that way, I think it could be a catalyst for like a vault up the table this season. If they don't do that, I think that's kind of the season done for Manchester City, and they'll continue to get wins. It's not like they're going to drop down the table or anything, but I do think it is either a game that propels them forward or a game that kind of keeps them exactly where they are with very little in between. And that begs the question, for Graham specifically, Graham, are we due for a Pep overthink game? Are we due for Pep trying to do something one step too far? Are we going to see them man mark and try to sneak 13 players on without the referee noticing it? Like, could we potentially get a Pep overthink? Joe, bite your tongue.
I mean, this game that we're talking about right here had a midfield of centre backs. Is this not the overthink game from Pep Guardiola?
I think it's not weird enough yet.
Okay,
we
so
need one more wrinkle.
Actually, Ederson in midfield are up front with Erling Haaland. Joe, if that were to happen, would you concede and say that would be a Pep overthink?
As I was watching this game, I was kind of already thinking that this setup was a Pep overthink, so I might already be there with you guys. I don't know. It's not going to take a whole lot more to get me there.
All right. Well, let's not overthink this one too much at this point. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, let's look at Juventus' win over PSV and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League knockout round playoff first leg roundup. It still rolls off the tongue. Let's go to Turin, where Juventus had a 2-1 win over PSV Eindhoven. Weston McKennie with a glorious opener. With Mr. Ledesma, of course, is his defensive opponent in this one. Magula with the winner for Juve. And, Graham, it was delightful to see Ivan Perisic, using both feet for his goal and reminding me that he's still a professional soccer player. That was nice.
And what a goal it was as well. Like, just incredible execution by him for that equaliser, where he takes it down. The ball's got snow on it as it's coming down out the air. He takes it down with one touch onto the other foot and then pulls the low shot in at the near post. And it happened in like a split second. It was a great goal.
It was a very good goal indeed. What did we make of this performance from Juve? They are one of the, I think, the only Italian team, in fact, that won in this round.
Yeah, I thought it was an uneven performance by Juventus, but I do think they were just about the stronger team and deserved the win. Obviously, there's the McKennie rocket, which just about takes the cover off the ball. And I thought he was generally positive in an advanced midfield role. I know, shocker, he was actually playing in his proper position in this game and not at left back or in goal or something else. And I thought he did well with getting entries into the box, and he was quite happy to leave the build-up play to Locatelli and Renato Vega, who joined Juventus in the January transfer window and has been put into the first team. And then it was Weah as the right back on paper, but he was almost playing as a winger in this game because Nico Gonzalez ahead of him was being pushed into the middle to be closer to Kolo Muani. And there was this one moment I think it was in the first half, when Weah surges down the right side and he leaves a couple of defenders for dead. He does that thing where he knocks the ball around one side and then runs round the other side, which is always, players don't do that enough. It's always very aesthetically pleasing when a player does that. And then he gets a ball into the box. It's a decent ball, and then Bangula, I think it's a save that he produces with the opportunity. There wasn't really another moment like that from Weah, but he was important to the structure of the team, keeping the width. So yeah, it's kind of standard fare for Juventus at this point, where there were still flaws in their performance. There was a period where PSV were really pressing, and obviously they get the equaliser. But I think they deserve the win.
Yeah, Taylor, deserve the win.
Deserve the McKennie. That's right. That goal was wonderful. I enjoyed the Slack channel exploding with Graham Ruthven being very, very excited about that goal. Then I went and watched it and enjoyed it immensely, even if the CBS halftime crew made me wait a very, very, very long time to get to see it. When I did get to see it, though, I was overjoyed because it's a great strike. It is a confident strike with him in his more comfortable position, and it made me very, very happy to see him do his wand celebration as well. So a good win for Juve, but specifically a good win for Weston McKennie.
What were they doing? Was Jamie Carragher dancing again?
You had to wait for their Heineken moment, and they had to take 3 breaks, I think, before you got there.
Mika
right?
Richards had to describe his lunch for 30 seconds and how full he was, and how he didn't really want to do the halftime analysis because he was so full, because he had ribs and sweet and sour chicken. And I can keep going with his.
I can't tell if this is real or fake, which makes me think
100%
it's absolutely real.
He had his feet up on the desk and was talking about how full he was and that there was too much food and then he had too many sweets, and so I guess he could do some analysis now. And then he kind of talked his way through somewhat of the highlights.
Did they know they were on air?
Always a good question.
I'll bring us back to this actual game. I'll do that. I'll be the one that gets us away from the CBS talk. I did enjoy getting to see Weston McKennie play. I'm going to disagree with Graham. I feel like it's not his best position, but I know where you're coming from. Actually getting to play in midfield, I thought he was a little clunky, especially in the opening stages of this game. He's just not a pure number 10, and that is kind of what his role was in this match, playing underneath Kolo Muani. He did float around into the half spaces some, but McKennie, we know, has the sauce to pull some of those things off at times. I just didn't think he was super settled in possession early on in this game. And in some ways, this was the quintessential Weston McKennie game, where you think you're probably going to get a few of those, oops, didn't mean to have that first touch, oops, didn't mean to give the ball away there. And then you're also going to have a, what did Weston McKennie just do? The cover is no longer on the ball kind of moment. And you're going to be up in this match. So I really enjoyed the Weston McKennie classic that this was. I also enjoyed Tim Weah at right back at club level. I'm a fan of Tim Weah playing up top. I'm a fan of Tim Weah playing at right back. Anything that gets Tim Weah on the field, because I think he's that versatile of a player. I enjoyed him in this game. I don't think Weah was flawless either, but he had some really nice moments on that right side with some of his distribution. It was fun to see 2 Americans playing at right back in this match. Richie Ledesma, as Brian mentioned, playing for PSV. He's the only American healthy enough to play for PSV right now, despite there being 8,000 of them. Tillman's got a little bit of a knock, and Dest is, of course, still out, and Pepe's going to be out, as we talked about earlier on this week. So Ledesma is carrying that torch for America, the PSV right now. I did not think that this was a super high-quality game on the whole. That has kind of been the Juve theme throughout the season, and PSV are not at full strength right now. But in the same turn, it is the first time all year that Juve have won 3 games in a row. So I will give them their flowers. They were the better team in this game. They deserve this result.
PSV is a team made for the Turkish Super League based on some of the names that I'm seeing here.
Go on.
I forgot just that there are 4 Americans because I forgot about Ledesma. You laid them out there. Then you've got like Rick Karsdorp. Remember him from the Roma days with the tattoos and always fighting with people. You've got Esmir Bayraktarovic, who's suddenly for PSV and not for the U.S., so he doesn't qualify as a U.S. player. Tyrell Malacia on the bench in there. You had a Bakayoko subbing. And then you've got Luke de Jong. You've got Ivan Perisic. It's just a strange team. But they fought well, and I won't be surprised if they make life difficult for Juve in the second leg with Richard Ledesma starting it right back because I respect his rebound.
And Taylor, you didn't even mention the player with the best name in European football, Ryan Flamingo at centre-back for PSV. What a name.
I'm so sorry.
Wow. That's fantastic. Luke de Jong is 34. Just saying. Just putting it out there.
He's timeless.
He's 34 until he's 35.
That's right.
That's all I can tell you.
Perisic
We all agree that if
is
Gio Reyna had scored that goal, Joe would be never stop talking about how it was.
I gave Weston McKennie like a good minute and a half of airtime.
McKennie on Sky.
But you're
Italia.
one negative comment.
You're
about him. That's all
completely
my brain.
correct. 100% right, Ted.
Yeah, McKennie on the Italian broadcast said he was quite self-deprecating. He said,
Oh, this is
I thought
good.
it was going to hit someone in traffic when the ball went through. So I enjoyed that very much.
Amazing.
He's great. Very cool. By the way, a fun stat I saw here. This is the first time Juve have won the first leg of a Champions League knockout game since May 2017, which is when they went all the way to the finale, if I remember correctly.
Confirmed.
And they won't be doing that this year.
Oh boy! Is that the verdict, Joe?
Yes, you did say Juventus. I mean, it actually doesn't matter. It's true for both.
All right, let's move on to Juventus. Let's go to Lisbon, where Sporting suffered a 3-0 home defeat at the hands of Borussia Dortmund. A first win, Taylor, for Niko Kovac in charge of Dortmund in his second game at the helm.
It was, and I thought it was a very inspiring game from Dortmund to really take the game to Sporting, and once they had the lead, make it really difficult for Sporting to find any way through, and then Dortmund ended up getting 2 more goals off of that. But I also thought it was really interesting that we saw them adjust at halftime, at least to my mind. Defensively, I saw Dortmund in the first half, more so in just kind of a 4-3-3, when applying pressure further up the pitch, where you would have the kind of front 3 tighter together, you'd have a midfield 3 slightly more spread apart. I'm doing the fingers for everybody on TV or YouTube. Apologies for
The
doing
fingers,
that.
Taylor?
There you go. So 4-3-3 higher up when they're pressing, then kind of moving into a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-5-1 like deeper. And that worked really well in clogging the middle and in limiting some of Sporting's ability to kind of play through. In the second half, though, I saw it as more of a 4-2-2-2 with the kind of like empty bucket like shape, and it basically, I'll do few. Here you go, 2-2-2, and it worked really, really well because basically you could have the front 2 press and cut off half the pitch and then sort of suffocate from there. But you had your wide players marked, you had defensive depth with the other 2 central midfielders, and Sporting just really struggled to get much going in this game, as attested by the scoreline. But to have a coach who's just come in, as you said, Ryan, the second game in charge, and already have the team sort of in a simplified way with players in their logical positions doing logical things, but then also having players capable of adjusting at halftime to really nullify any identified threats, it has to be a positive sign for a club that have not had many positive signs this season.
There we go. Good stuff. We had a big French game, of course. Brest with a 3-0 home defeat at the hands of PSG. I'm sure across France there was some big Brest support in this game. Another 2 goals for Ousmane Dembele. 18 in his last 11 appearances. Ousmane Dembele is going off at the moment. Graham, my key observation from this game is those PSG shirts they're wearing with the wings on the shoulders. I think I liked it.
Yeah, they're not bad.
That's how we all feel about PSG, right? Like, I think I like them.
This is the point I was going to come to. Was I really like this PSG team, and it's weird to feel that way about a PSG team. And I actually think it's quite simple why they are so good. They have this midfield unit that are nice and close together. So it's João Neves, who, by the way, has been brilliant in the last 2-3 months. He's truly become the player that I thought he would be for this PSG team and a Lucho team. So it's Neves, Vitinha and Fabian Ruiz in that midfield unit. They're nice and close together. They bounce passes off each other. They win the ball back quickly. And then ahead of them, they have these like attacking missiles that they can send forward in the shape of Dembele and Barcola and Doué. So it never really feels like their play gets bogged down in the middle. There's always an outlet for them to go to. They have these options and runners. And I think the question for PSG at this point is whether they can keep up this level of finishing, because, as you said, Ryan, Dembele is on an absolute heater at the moment. We know he will come back down to earth at some point because he's Ousmane Dembele, and that's the way his entire career has been until this point. I think he's like 28, 29. He's going to be the same player. He will have a drought in front of goal before too long. And then Bradley Barcola is still young, so maybe there's a drop-off from him as well. And I can remember all the way back to like September and October with this PSG team, where Luis Enrique kept on pointing out, we are creating so many chances, look at where we are in the XG table, we're just not finishing them. Now, they've gone to the other side of the spectrum, where they are finishing basically every chance that they create. So I think the truth for this PSG team is somewhere in the middle, and so I await when that drop-off inevitably happens. But just watching the profile of this team, the fact they've got young, hungry players that play this energetic style, I really enjoy watching them at the moment. And they've still to integrate Kvaradona, which is a frightening thought for any team that has to come up against them.
Graham,
Oh, wow.
my last question for you from this game. The Vitinha penalty, for people who haven't seen it, go watch it. Is it the most disrespectful penalty of all time?
More disrespectful than the Julian Alvarez one from the weekend, do you think?
I think so.
And so scared?
I think it's more disrespectful than just a full-on Panenka, because if I'm breaking it down, it is the slowest of slow walk-ups to the ball. Then it is staring at the goalkeeper and then very gently passing the ball to the other side. Then not really leaving the spot to celebrate, but instead just continuing to stare at the goalkeeper with like arms raised, and then the entire team celebrates with him. It's the run-up combined with the slowness of the pass combined with the just standing there and staring at the goalkeeper to celebrate that had me feeling like there was some sort of bad blood between the two that I didn't know about.
Does he do that thing that, this is a thing, I have no idea how professional footballers are able to do this, where he waits for the goalkeeper to know where he's going and then goes the opposite direction?
Yeah.
I have no idea how players can do that. It's ridiculous.
I think it is the slowness of the walk-up, and then there's, I think, a little hop in there where he like accelerates, and I think that explosion of speed makes the goalkeeper basically makes them flinch, and they flinch in the direction they're going, and then I think you pass to the other side. I think that's what Vitinha does. There's a lot going on in this one that I could not have pulled off, but it was lovely and disrespectful in the exact same moment.
I think the most disrespectful penalty I've ever seen, there was a lower league player, I don't know if Graham remembers him, called Lee Trundle.
Yes.
A bit of a legend in the lower leagues. He sort of, the whistle went for him to take the penalty, and he sort of paused and went, I'm just going to go readjust the ball. So he slowly walks to the ball, bends over to touch it, and then boots it in. In one moment.
In one movement.
Move.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Amazing.
I want to see this now. I also want to note that if you told me there was a player named Lee Trundle and paused for a second, I would have said, was he a lower league player? Because his name is Lee Trundle. Like, I think that kind of gives it away right there.
He was indeed trundling through the lower leagues.
Oh, that's so good. I'm just watching this now. This is elite stuff.
So,
Right, Joe?
Joe, I think it's important to note here, I think secretly a villain. I feel like Joe watches stuff and roots for the villain. I think Joe likes villainous moments like this, and
This
I'm
is
not
just
surprised.
great content.
There we go.
Absolutely astonishing. The power he gets from having it's like those really impressive fighters who can generate like an absurd amount of power with a 1-inch punch. This guy's amazing. Lee Trundle, shout out to you, my friend.
I'm just looking at his Wikipedia page, Ryan. So I remember him from like Swansea and Bristol. Yeah. He's played for some clubs over the course of his career. 2 seasons ago, he was playing for, by the way, he's 48 and still playing. He was playing for Mumbles Rangers in Wales. What a name.
You meant to say Mumford and Sons, Graham? I don't.
He also played for Harverford. I can't pronounce this. It's a Welsh team.
Lord. You can't pronounce this.
Harverford West County. Wow, that's difficult to say in 2018.
Tom Haverford. That's the one. You're almost there with these names, Graham.
You try and say this. It's a Welsh name.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, we'll take a look at Lee Trundle's biography later on. But it looks like PSG and Dortmund are probably the most through from these playoff rounds with their 3-0 advantages in their away ties so far. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to take a look at Wednesday's action, including but not limited to not a great result for Milan and a big one for Bayern. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League review. We go to Parkhead, where Bayern Munich had a 2-1 win over Celtic. Michael Elise with a banger, and Sir Harold Kane with a goal as well. 2 goals made in London, just saying. A late fight back from Celtic, nearly materialised in this one, Graham. Pretty exciting ending to this one, as it looked like, the home side might have got something here. But Bayern have progressed from their last 13 Champions League knockout ties after winning the first leg. So perhaps the writing is on the wall, but a fun game, Graham.
Yeah, in the end, it was a fun game. This was one of those games where I had this theory that maybe Celtic, while clearly the underdogs, would have a threat that would expose some of Bayern Munich's weaknesses. They're good in quick transition. They've got Daisen Maeda, who is... We had a question. I don't know why this question always sticks in the mind for me, but we had a listener question a few months ago about players that had one superpower, and maybe they weren't at the highest level, but there was this one thing that they were amazing at. Maeda's one of those players where he is just lightning quick, and I think as an individual presser is maybe the best individual presser in world football, as Manuel Neuer discovered nearly to his cost a couple moments in this game where he nearly coughs up a goal under pressure from Maeda. And the last 50 minutes from Celtic were really, really encouraging. There was just so much more energy. They had, to that point, Maeda forcing mistakes from Neuer and Upamecano. They were just so much higher up the pitch in that period. They then get the goal through Maeda to make it 2-1. And there was a period for 5 minutes after that where Bayern Munich were rocking, and it felt like Celtic were really creating openings. Before those 15 minutes, it was just complete dominance by Bayern Munich, where they controlled the match. They had Celtic pegged back. There was a disallowed goal for Celtic in the first 3 minutes, and I think had that gone in, possibly this is a different sort of match. But there was a period in the first half where Bayern just didn't let Celtic have a touch of the ball, and they couldn't get out in quick transition. So I think Bayern in those final 15 minutes took their foot off the gas. Clearly they are the strong favourites to go through in the tie. But I am pleased at least that Celtic showed for a period in this match that they can pose a threat.
They can indeed. Taylor, did you enjoy this one? It seems like the inevitable did happen here, and Bayern could go pretty deep in this contest, as they want to do.
Yeah, I really did. I didn't think Bayern were like so rocky that this was like a chance for them to really lose. I went into this assuming that Bayern would win, but hoping that Celtic could make it interesting, and that is more or less exactly what we got. I thought Bayern looked confident. I thought it was a credit to them that they kind of kept going when they had early opportunities, and so many different opportunities in the first half. Credit to Kasper Schmeichel for some of his saves, but that they end up getting the go-ahead goal right at the end of the first half, and then Harry Kane has the beautiful volley. You should probably mark Harry Kane, by the way. You should.
Yeah, Taylor.
In the box, yeah.
I often think of you as our like set piece theatre person on this show. What was going on there? What were Celtic doing? Like, why was Engels on two players, and then the player at the back post who was completely free was Harry Kane, like the best striker in Europe? I don't understand.
I think it is a credit to Bayern in this situation. I almost said Spurs. That would have been a mistake. It's a credit to Bayern that the way they end up kind of lining up, they basically create multiple scrums, and then I think Harry Kane is able to fade to the back post. I don't know if that is master set piece theater. I think it would be a bit much to say they drew this up to a wide open Harry Kane to the back post, but he definitely seems to have been, instead of trying to crash and get on the end of one, there for anything that pops through at the back post, and that's kind of how this went, except that instead of popping through, it landed perfectly on his foot. Still, you should mark him, and you should probably not let Elise cut inside while you're learning things from this game. And so at 2-0, I felt like, okay, it's going to finish 4-0. Like, that's all she wrote. We know how this is going. That Celtic fight back the way they do, that you get the crowd up for it, that they're cheering every single moment, even when it doesn't seem like there's any way Celtic are going to get a goal. They are still cheering every pass, every run, every ball in behind. And I think that energy and atmosphere made this game so much more fun. And that was the big thing for this game. I think it was really fun. I ended up kind of not paying attention as much to the tactics as it went on and just enjoying a game of football. And I think that is always a very fun thing when it happens.
Was fun indeed. Graham, Celtic losing a fixture at home for the first time in 410 days, with Leipzig and Atleti being visitors among that period. That's quite an impressive record, is it not?
Yeah, but I think the last time they lost at home, they must have been thumped by someone in the Champions League. I think there's only two or three Champions League home games in that period. They've been decent in the Champions League this season. I know they got a slightly favourable run, but they completely dismantled RB Leipzig at home. I think that was one of the best Scottish performances in Europe I've ever seen. And then they went away to a really in-form Atalanta team as well. And that's the thing for Brendan Rodgers is this season he has shown a willingness to be a little bit more pragmatic, to be more compact, because in the past he's tried to just do what he does domestically and try and impose Celtic's game on these much better, more talented teams, and they've been absolutely thumped. And obviously that happened still in this year's competition against Dortmund. But they went away to Atalanta and they ground out a point. For periods of this match, Bayern Munich, they were completely dominant with the ball. They created opportunities. I didn't feel like like Celtic were hanging on for dear life either. I did feel like they were competitive, at least in a defensive sense. So I think that's progress for Celtic, and so the challenge for next season is to build on that and see if they can go even further.
Indeed. All right, let's go to Feyenoord, who had a 1-0 win over Milan. No Italians in the starting 11 for Milan in this one. They did have what's being dubbed as the Fab Four up top, Taylor. Pulisic, Real, Jimenez and João Felix. Wasn't so fab for them in the end, though.
Oh, sorry. Are they already calling those guys the Fab Four? Two of them have been there for like 30 seconds. Are we there on the nickname?
That's what I'm hearing,
nice.
Joe.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's more like the Fab Four, right?
The original Fab Four created almost as much XG in this game as the current Fab Four.
If not more.
To that? Yeah, if not more. Yes, this is a strange one because, I mean, I think maybe you can say it's Milan still figuring things out under Conceição, having two new players come in, as Joe has already alluded to, with João Felix and Jimenez like only recently arriving, Jimenez agreeing to this move and the sale prior to knowing that he would then be returning to play Feyenoord in the very next game. But I think at the same time, this is a Feyenoord team who have sacked their manager, 2 days before this game? Brian Priske, who replaced Arne Slot, who moved to Liverpool, obviously, sacked 2 days before this visit from Milan. So there's no manager. It's shaky times. Their league form is crumbling, and yet they're able to get the results against Milan, who I think just didn't really offer very much. The weather, a key part in this one, obviously, with heavy rain, and that's where the goal comes from. It's a howler from Maignan. But I think it's an interesting position for Milan and Feyenoord to both be in, because now Feyenoord in the second leg can feel a little bit more comfortable, but Milan will have the point to prove, and you would assume will come out guns blazing, because I think they can easily make up that 1-0 loss. At the same time, if we see them trying to cram in more attacking pieces and trying to figure it out on the fly, wheels could come off as well. So I think this is another game that is very interestingly poised ahead of the second leg.
It is interestingly poised, Graham, but we would be hoping from a little bit more from the Rossoneri in the return leg.
Oh, a lot more from Milan. I thought they basically offered nothing in this match. I mean, João Felix was, I think, quite clearly the biggest goal threat for Milan. Not a huge number of, or any clear-cut chances for either side. But I must say that Felix was the only player that was at least trying to make things happen by dribbling around the edge of the box and getting shots away. Not a hugely productive match for Christian Pulisic, one of the quietest matches he's had this season that I've certainly watched anyway. And Santi Jimenez, who starts as the new centre-forward for this team, has had a couple of really good games for Milan since joining, from Feyenoord, of course, in the January transfer window. Basically got no service. Like, he had nothing to work off in this game. So, Milan will need to be much more proactive in the second leg. I didn't think there was a huge amount of quality between the two teams, to be honest, but one player that I thought did stand out was the goal scorer, Paxiao, who, as Taylor says, the goal comes from a mistake by Mike Maignan, so I don't even think that was one of his highlights of the game, Paxiao, but he was so quick and willing to have a go at Kyle Walker throughout this match, and he continually took people on, and he seemed to be playing at a higher speed to everyone else around him. So whenever Feyenoord got on the ball, it was like the pace of the game was cranked up to 100 miles an hour every time he got on the ball. Just a really exhilarating player to watch, and you can see why he's been linked with, in the last few months, going back to last summer, he's been linked with a number of Premier League clubs, including Liverpool, where there is obviously the Arne Slot link, and apparently Feyenoord want 35 million euros for him, which, having watched him last night and watched a bit of him previously, and a player I often sign in Football Manager, which I know is the most important factor, I'll be shocked if he's not in the Premier League or one of the big five leagues next summer.
All right, a couple more games to look at. Bruges with a 2-1 win over Atalanta in the black and blue derby. No one's calling it that. Gustav Nilsson won and scored a pretty controversial late penalty, Taylor, to give the Belgians the advantage in this one. What do we make of that ending?
A totally valid and not at all controversial penalty is what I say. I'm just trying to make Graham's head explode. I thought this was another... I think it's the theme for the match week. It was another fun game with two flawed teams. And I think what you get in that is a lot of attacking play, a lot of shooting, not a particularly high XG because those shots are usually from strange angles or from distance. But it was an open game where you got sort of suddenly a breakaway. Oh, suddenly another breakaway. Neither one managed to finish it. That was an open goal that he missed. Oh, but that was a shot from 20 yards out that went in. It was a really fun back and forth game. I think that is a bit soured by the way it ends with the penalty. I think it's another one where I saw the outrage before I watched this game. And so I expected it to be like a truly awful decision. And I think the decision in the Madrid derby was worse than this one, to be honest, because I think we've seen this called time and time again, maybe because it's a penalty, maybe the conditions make it worse, but it's basically defender running, defender puts their arms up to kind of gain leverage and instead hits the opposition player in the face. They don't mean to do it. It's certainly not intentional, but when you put your arms up and you make contact like that, we see that called time and time again. Should we see it called? Should the physicality of that contact and the intentionality of that contact matter? Those are open to discussion. I just think this is something that we've seen given, and maybe to the chagrin of many, once it's given, I don't think VAR is ever going to overturn it, because you're just going to see in the replay that, yep, he touched his face, the player stopped running and fell down because he got poked in the face or poked in the eye or slapped in the face or whatever it was. As soft as it was, I think it's always going to be upheld. So I don't love the decision. I don't really agree with it in spirit, but I understand why it is given in the moment.
All right.
Graham?
There we go. Graham?
I thought it was a bad call. I kind of disagree on like you're saying you've seen them given. I think it's kind of unique in that sense that it seems to be. I mean, we've seen defenders when they full on hit someone in the face, but it seemed to be like his fingers and like it seemed to be a brush rather than like a full on force into the head or face of a player. So yeah, I just thought it was
the player in question has extreme face ticklishness, and so when it was just gently grazed, he couldn't handle it and went down. So in that way, red card.
That could be it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's a serious ailment, Taylor. We shouldn't make light of it, I think, at this
Never.
stage. Never, indeed. One more game to quickly
SFT,
mention.
man. SFT. It's a scourge. One day we'll find a cure.
One day. Benfica finally have an advantage going into their second leg with Monaco. A 1-0 win in the Principality for Benfica. Monaco having to play most of the second half with only 10 men in that one. That pretty much rounds up the Champions League. What are we calling it? League
Joe
phase
asked us to
knockout
clear
round.
out for 10 minutes so he could talk about that
I
Monaco game.
I
don't
had
know what
more
you're
to
talking
go.
about, Ryan.
I had more to go on the ref discussion, but Ryan just moved us right along. You couldn't take the face ticklish chat for any more. I had like I was about to empty the tank on the ref chat.
Too late now, Joe. We're done.
Oh man, drat.
All right, that one rounds out our Champions League knockout round playoff first leg roundup. Do join us next week for our Champions League knockout round playoff second leg roundup. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your contributions.
Thank you very much, Ryan
It's
Bailey.
better
for getting
every
through
time.
that.
I'm so obsessed with it. Joe, thank you very much indeed. Sorry that you got cut off with your key penalty discussion at the end there.
You know, it's all right, Ryan. Nobody's perfect. We'll come back stronger next week.
Indeed. Graham Ruthven, pleasure as always, my good man.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
Listener, thank you very much for joining us on this intrepid journey. We'll be back on the feed very shortly. But for now, bye!